Hello again, everybody. It's your old pal, Guardian Enzo, coming to you once more with a Lost in Anime season preview. And what a season spring has been. Pretty much as good as I expected, and I expected it to be pretty good. I don't expect summer to be as good, but it's going to be fun to talk about it anyway, because there are a couple of really interesting prospects this season. And this season has gotten a lot more interesting in the last week, actually. Some very, very late entries, late to the party entries in the summer schedule, which kind of needed them. You know, summer's typically not a huge anime season, and I think this year was kind of looking like it was headed in that direction. So it's great to be with you again. And it's great to be doing another video. I wish I could do more of them. It's just a question of time. I'm working on that, though. I have some irons in the fire, as they say. Speaking of irons in the fire, it is hot in Japan. June is a rainy season, and it's not typically super hot in Kansai in June, but today it's super hot and no rain. So got the air conditioner whirring lightly in the background, hopefully noise canceling that. And just very glad to be with you again. Hope your year is going well. And excited to talk about one show in particular, but some others too. I don't think we're going to go for a long honkin' preview this time like we had in spring. That was an unusual season, but those are, you know, there's drawbacks to big anime seasons, and one of them is what they do to my schedule. So summer may be a little bit more manageable. We'll see. And without further ado, let's jump right in to summer. And it's a big summer with the ONA, the net animations. We're looking at something like 54, 55 series, which that's heavy for a summer. Summer and winter usually don't get to that number. And as overtaxed as the studio system is at the moment, this is just further evidence that the industry is not doing anything to correct that problem. 54, 55 series in summer is kind of crazy. Basically, it's the same size as spring. I'm not previewing anywhere near as many shows because there aren't anywhere near as many interesting shows in this season as there were in the spring. My percentage is closer to about 25% than my summer. Spring was almost half. So that's pretty low, but you know, I've had worse seasons in terms of the percentage of series I've previewed. And as I said, there's been a couple of interesting late additions that have kicked that number up. As usual, you know, I go into more breadth in the written preview, which you'll see linked in the description below. So please go there, where I talk about all the shows and I talk about the seasonal trends and stuff. Some of the stuff I won't necessarily get into in the video portion of this, where I'm really focusing more on depth in more specific areas. And one of them is Rurouni Kenshin 2023. And I'm pretty sure, I wouldn't swear to it, but I'm pretty sure that my written preview for RK was the longest written preview I've ever done. Helck Mononogatari was pretty long, but this is really long, and it's for a lot of reasons. One of them being that, you know, for me as an anime and manga fan, Rurouni Kenshin is debatably the most important series in my life. It was one of the ones that really cemented me as a fan. I mean, I knew Star Blazers, which is what we called Galaxy Express 99, excuse me, Space Battleship Yamato, and I knew Speed Racer, and maybe I'd seen Cardcaptor Sakura on Saturday morning, but Rurouni Kenshin was really the first anime on VHS from Japan Video in San Francisco. Really the first anime that I ever watched, and I kind of knew, okay, that's anime. There might have been a Ghibli film or something I'd seen before that, but this is really the first series anime, and it turned me on to manga. So I would go to Borders, and I would drink coffee, and I would sit reading RK in Borders, and I loved it, and it had a profound impact on me as a fan. I still consider it a masterpiece of shonen, one of the best ever drawn. And the first 2 seasons of it, which were produced by Studio Gallop, were great. Especially their adaptation of the Kyoto arc, which is, again, I think in the short list of the best shonen manga arcs of all time. But the 3rd season by Queen was a disaster. Well, it wasn't a disaster, but it was unfortunate because it veered away from where the manga was going, and it did some original material that wasn't particularly good. And one of the things I realized once I caught up with the manga over all those lattes is that there was a phenomenal arc to conclude the manga, more or less concluded, called the Revenge arc, Jinshu arc, and almost as great as Kyoto. And it grated on me. It's grated on me for almost 20 years, however long it's been, that we never got an anime adaptation of that. We got the couple of OVAs from Dean, which were very beautiful, but were pretty unfaithful to the manga. We got a later OVA years later, written by Okadomari, that should be put into a rocket and blasted into the sun. And that's it. And for years, we never got a reboot of the anime, which I felt it was crazy that we never got it. The series remained incredibly popular, and it always baffled me, especially once the live action films came out and were all blockbusters. Why aren't we getting a reboot of Rurouni Kenshin to completely adapt the manga? I mean, it happened with Full Metal Alchemist, happened with Hunter x Hunter, although that one's still ongoing theoretically. And then it happened. We all know what it is. I think most of us do anyway. And that's the elephant in the room where Rurouni Kenshin is concerned. There was a time when a Rurouni Kenshin reboot anime would have been possibly the most exciting anime announcement I could ever imagine. But that incident, where, if you don't know, I won't go into great tale, but Watsuki Sensei, the author, the mangaka, was arrested for possession of child pornography. And the manga, his new manga, the sequel manga, the Hokkaido arc, was temporarily dropped from syndication, although it was picked back up later on. And eventually, we got this announcement. And I had to decide, what I was going to do about Rurouni Kenshin, the anime, in 2023, because it's not an easy question. You go back to Wagner, all the people where you say, how do we separate the art from the artist? And where I settled on this was that I couldn't not cover Rurouni Kenshin. I couldn't not cover it. It means too much to me as a fan. I will respect everyone's opinion on whether it should be covered, whether it should exist. I think a valid argument can be made that it shouldn't. But at the same time, at least where my website is concerned, I'm not going to have that debate every week. It's not a debate that makes sense to have every week. No one's mind is going to be changed. So I'm going to cover it. And I'm going to talk here mainly about the anime itself, which looks great in the previews we've seen. It's a bit sad to have all new casting, but after all this time, I think it was inevitable that we have all new casting. Having a man play Kenshin, that's certainly a change too. But I think it looks great. And Lead-In Films, the studio, has done really some great work in the last couple of years. They've really leveled up as a studio. They've done good work on adaptation, narratively speaking, and even their visuals have improved. It doesn't have a big name director attached to it, but it looks really solid. The only thing we don't know is what it will be. They're starting at the beginning. That much is absolutely clear. We can sit here logically and say it makes absolutely no sense to adapt Rurouni Kenshin in 2023 and not adapt the Jinshu arc. But how will that happen? Is this going to be Brotherhood? Or are we going to speed through the pre-Jinshu material and then give that a full adaptation? Is it going to take the full time and adapt everything the way that Hunter x Hunter 2011 did? Is it going to skip around, pick and choose? Will it give any? Will it acknowledge the existence of the Hokkaido series, the current continuation, which is in syndication and is quite good in my opinion, although not as good as the original? I don't know. It's a Noitamina series. It's probably going to be at least 4 cores, I imagine. Maybe 2 cores and then 2 cores of Urusei Yatsura and then 2 more cores of Rurouni Kenshin. Something like that. But we don't know. That's the biggest question hanging over this adaptation. But in my heart, as nonsensical as the studio, as the production committee system can be, I have a hard time imagining a Rurouni Kenshin adaptation in 23 that doesn't adapt the Jinshu arc. And if long as it does adapt the Jinshu arc and it does it well and does justice to it, I can kind of live with everything else, because everything else that needs to be adapted well has been adapted well. But that arc needs a proper anime adaptation. And whatever else this version does, as long as it does that, I'm okay with it. So fingers crossed, knock on wood. Hopefully we get that proper adaptation. So let's now move on to one of those latecomers, a last-minute addition to the schedule, which is Link Click Season 2. Shiguang Daili Ren. My apologies for my Chinese pronunciation, which I know must be truly awful. A wonderful, wonderful science fiction series that I've talked about quite a bit in the past. Season 1 aired in 2021, was absolutely fantastic. It's really the first donghua that I've ever really loved unreservedly. If I'd ranked it as a standard anime in 2021, it certainly would have been in my top 10 list that season. I think it would have been in my top 5. It's been a long time coming since the announcement of a season 2 that to get to this point, but it's here. We're getting it now. And it's actually going to premiere at Anime Expo, and then around the middle of July, we'll start a regular stream. So, really a wonderful series. I don't see any reason to suspect season 2 won't be great too. I mean, it has all the same staff working on it. The question, really, the only question I would say with Link Click is, when I do my year-end lists, should I consider it as an anime? I mean, because it's not anime. Some people would say it's anime, but then some people say any animation is anime, and I don't think any animation is anime. I think Japanese animation is anime. Non-Japanese animation is not anime. So, but it's probably as close to anime as anything could realistically be and not be anime. Anything that doesn't have a Japanese component in the production. So I don't really know what to call this. I'll have to make a decision on that, assuming that the second season is as good as the first. I'll have to make a call on that at the end of the year and say, okay, should I consider this anime or not? Either way, it's high. It's the only other series that made my highest expectations tier this month, and it's great to have that little B12 shot for the schedule right at the last minute. Then we jump into the mid-table category, which is highlighted by Oooku, the first series I think I've ever previewed that had the same word, the same letter, 3 letters in a row. And what's notable about this is that it's a series that when Samu and I did our video podcast a while back, we did a topic of pick a manga that that will never be adapted that you think should be. He picked this one, and I picked Yugami-kun, but he picked this one. And lo and behold, I guess the last laugh's on him because it's getting an anime. Netflix has done their thing this year. They've funded a couple of series of beloved manga that would never get anime otherwise, in this and Pluto. Pluto is the one I'm extremely looking forward to. That's coming up in the fall. This one is Samu's big pick, I'm sure. And it's basically an alternative history of a Japan where a disease has wiped out most of the male population, and so the Tokugawa shogunate has become female-led, and it's become a totally matriarchal society. And from the impression I get from Samu is that this is a very arc-driven series, and that the Netflix anime is probably going to adopt maybe only 1 or 2 arcs, which he seems fine with. This one is Studio Dean, ironically, as we were just talking about Rurouni Kenshin. But they can do great work when they need to. Abe Noriyuki is a very, very good director. Kenji Cawaii is doing the music. So I think Samu will probably be pretty happy with this, would be my guess. And I'm looking forward to it. Next on the list is another late addition, last-minute addition to the schedule, which is Tonikaku Kawaii Joushikou-hen, which I guess they're calling an ONA, Original Net Animation, but I would show my age and call it a mini-series, because that's basically what it is. It's 4 episodes. And I guess that's what this arc needed. So good on them for making a series that's exactly as long as it needs to be. Like Book of Circus was 10 episodes because that's what it needed. Kuroshitsuji. So what I hear from manga readers is that this is not the best arc in the manga. It features Nasa teaching a class at an all-girls high school and Tsukasa being jealous. But any Tonikawa is good Tonikawa in my book. I'm glad to have it, and I'm hoping that it's basically a bridge to a full season in another year or two, another season 3. And then we have another vexing series, which is Sakina ko ga Megane wo Wasureta, which is a manga I love. I've talked to you many times about how I adore the middle school romance genre in manga at the moment. I think it's absolutely booming. Dangers in My Heart is, Boku no Kokoro Yabayatsu. That's at the head of the class, but this one is definitely at the top of the next tier for me. I love the manga. It's about a girl who can't see Jack without her glasses, who tends to always forget them, and the boy who sits next to her ends up being her eyes when she forgets her glasses. And it's adorably cute and funny. Everything you want a middle school rom-com to be. So why isn't it at my top of my expectations category? Why is it mid-table? Because it's Gohan's, which I think if you were to do a survey of anime fans, what's the worst studio in the world, Gohan's would probably be at the top of the list. If it's not Gohan's, it might be Naz, the ones who butchered Lucifer and Biscuit Hammer. And they're bad because of a lot of reasons. They're bad because they've been caught plagiarizing, but they're also bad because their visuals tend to be not just bad, but bizarre. The previews don't look terrible. The director is someone who's relatively competent and has worked outside of that studio. I love the manga enough that I'm going to hope that it's not a complete Biscuit Hammer botch job to make it unwatchable. But there's no denying that Gohan's makes it a lot less of an attractive proposition than it would have been for me otherwise. Then we have the sequel to Shinigami Bocchan Tokuro Maid, which should never have been CGI, should never have been JC staff, but it is. And it is what it is. I accept it. It's a manga I like very much. I don't think it's a masterpiece, but I think it's very good. If you saw the first season, it's about a young man, a young duke, who has been cursed by a witch, and anything he touches immediately dies. So he's been banished by his family. Only a maid and an old butler with him, and he falls in love with the maid and she with him. The material of the second season actually is my favorite of the entire manga, so I'm optimistic for that reason. I'm used to the CGI, I've accepted it, and it does have the same creative team that did High Score Girl, which I thought was overall a very good adaptation of a great manga, despite being CGI. And that was one where the CGI almost made sense given the themes. It makes no sense here. It's just strictly for money. But so this is the safest bet of the season for me. Not knowing what Rurouni Kenshin is going to be, I think this is probably the safest bet of the season for me. And then the last one in this, well, there's two more, but the last one that I really have expectations for is Undead Girl Murder Farce, which is really in this category because it's directed by Omata Shinichi, who sometimes goes by the name Hatakeyama Mamoru, who's one of the best directors in anime. Most famously, he did Showa Genroku Rakugo Shinju, but he's done Sakureya. He's done a lot of really, really great series. He's a tremendously stylish director. This is based on some novels, actually, not light novels, but actual novels by someone named Aosaki Yugo, whose work has never been in anime before, as far as I know. It's a detective story set in the 19th century, and it involves vampires and werewolves, and it sounds very interesting. I have no idea if the source material is any good, to be honest with you, but anything with Omata directing it is of sincere interest to me. The last one in the category is Horimiya Peace, which is, has a great director in Ishihara Masahi, but I think he botched the first season of Horimiya, which is close to a great romance manga, by choosing... He was rushed, which was not his fault, but the material he chose to adapt in that core is not a lot of it is not what I would have chosen to adapt, and what he skipped was not what I would have chosen to skip. So, rather than getting a second season of extra material, which is basically what it sounds like it's going to be, I wish they would have just given it 2 cours in the first place so he could have done a proper adaptation. It is what it is. There's some stories not adapted in the first season, obviously, you know now from me, that I think are really good. So hopefully he gets to those. We'll see. I actually lied. I've got a couple more series in this category, the mid-table. Helck, which is a manga about a human who is in a competition to become the Lord of Hell. I read about 15-20 chapters of the manga. I liked it. I didn't love it, but it was interesting. Mononogatari second season, a patron pick for me the first season. I liked it. I didn't love it. It did some good things, though. It got better as it progressed. I like to see the character development it showed. So Tsukumogami series can be interesting, and this one was pretty interesting. Last one in this category is AI, or AI. I'm not sure how they're pronouncing it, but AI no Idenshi, which is notable because it's a Madhouse series. We don't get that many of those. It's from a manga that was finished in 2017, so it's sort of odd that it's getting an adaptation now. Know nothing about it. I don't think there are any official or unofficial English translations. It's some sort of a future sci-fi story where androids are 10% of the population of the planet, and it's about a doctor who works on androids under the table. It does illegal operations on them. I don't really know. Maybe a bit of a sleeper just because it's Madhouse, but it has an old-time director, Sato Yuzo. Could be good. So that is the mid-table category this time around. Just to take a quick dive into the modestly interested category. Nothing here that really strikes me as being hugely upside. Arakawa Hiromu's Hyokasho Kizoku, which is stories about her farming life in Hokkaido, would be interesting, but it's a short. It's 3 minutes. Not a lot there, really. Nothing else in this category really jumps out at me. Maybe Zom 100 could have a mild sleeper vibe, maybe Dark Gathering, but I'm not expecting much. The biggest sleeper for me, if you could call Undead Girl Murder Farce a sleeper, but if that's not a sleeper, I think it would have to be AI no Idenshi is probably the closest thing I have to a sleeper. Undead Girl Murder Farce may be a little too obvious to call as a sleeper, actually. Nothing at all in OVA for me this season. Another one, a dying category. Nothing at all for me. It makes me sad, but I've accepted it. Then in the theatrical category, it's really totally dominated. It's not a big summer in most respects for movies. Summer is often the biggest season for theatrical anime. But not this year, except for it's got Kimitachi wa Dou Ikiru ka, which is How Do You Live? Which, if you're not a fan of Ghibli or have been under a rock, is Miyazaki Hayao's latest final film. How many of those has he had? I don't know, 4 or 5, but the guy's like around 80, so this time it could really be true. Any Miyazaki film is a big, big deal. It's going to make a lot of money. It's a big deal in anime. It's important in anime history because he's the most important director in anime history. We know almost nothing about it because Ghibli has chosen not to show us any extended previews. They're not even doing any original marketing artwork beyond the beautiful poster that Suzuki, the studio head producer, has drawn because he's also a very fine artist. That's it. Even the book that everyone assumed this was based on, which is a 1937 novel, Suzuki Toshio told us recently, oh, it has nothing to do with that except the title. He just likes the title. So we know really very, very little about what this is about. It's going to be a total mystery. If indeed this is going to be Miyazaki's final film, I really, really want this to be great. It would be nice if it is. I don't go to see a lot of movies in Japan. For a long time, it's been because of the pandemic. Now, the pandemic is still a factor for me, but also because they're so expensive. And I like to see things with subtitles still. This one, because of the historical nature of it, I will probably go see in a theater, actually. I have to be honest. Then we have another Osomatsu-san film, Tamashii no Takoyaki Party to Densetsu no Otomarikai. It's to celebrate the 6th anniversary of the anime. I assume it will be comedy driven, as Osomatsu-san usually is. And that pretty much covers summer 2023. Dominated by the specter of Rurouni Kenshin and the mysteries attached to it, but certainly looking a lot better now with Link Click and Tonikaku than it did a week ago. And we'll see what happens. As always, I sincerely appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate you stopping by the website, checking that out. I appreciate you watching the videos. As always, if you could like, comment, and subscribe, that would be of huge help to me. Please leave your comments below. As you know by now, I try to respond to as many of them as I possibly can. And I hope you guys have a great summer. I hope we have a great anime summer. And I'll be talking to you soon. I have some great video ideas. I'm really hoping I'm going to get to them sooner rather than later. We'll see. Knock on wood again. Okay, again, I say thank you. And as always, I implore you, if you take nothing else away from this message, please remember, stay frosty. Thanks a lot. See you next time.